All right, g'day. Welcome back to Collectivitis, the podcast where we dissect the disease that is collectivism. My name's Pietro. I am joined today by, we haven't had one in a little while, a libertarian candidate who's putting their hand up to try and win something. Now she's not a new candidate. She's been a candidate before a couple of times at the state and federal elections in 2022. So I'd like to welcome, without further ado, to the show, Chrysten Abraham. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me, Pietro.
Absolute pleasure. Now, I am correct. Those are the only two times that you've run for the Libertarian Party. Is that right? I haven't missed any.
Correct, yeah, federal and state in the 2022 elections.
Yeah. So, I mean, big year 2022. Lots happening. You haven't lost your enthusiasm to put your hand up and try win something.
It definitely broke me a little bit, to be completely honest. First time candidate in 2022 for the federal election, with a massive area to cover of Flinders. Broke me physically. And then in the state election in November, running for Frankston, it broke me mentally. But I learned so much from both elections that it's made it a lot better and a lot easier this time. Not getting my hopes up or, going too crazy this time.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you've clearly been repaired in both physically and mentally because you're back. And I mean, I meant more. I mean, obviously, libertarians running as a minor party, it's incredibly difficult to win. I didn't mean necessarily the difficulty in losing. I meant more the difficulty in campaigning and the strenuous work that comes from, putting yourself out there day after day and engaging with the public. You're energized for all of that again.
I am. I actually thrive off it, which is really funny to say. When I'm out there, I wish I could kind of do this all the time. I wish I was able to make campaigning my full-time job, but unfortunately I do have to pay the bills as well, so I do need a full-time job. So yeah, every time you get someone that actually listens and stops and talks to you, or wants you to change their mind about their political views, it actually makes it worthwhile. And even if that's just one person in half an hour, you know that you are making a difference in the future, for yourself, myself, the future kids that you and I might have separately, not together.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's often a barrier that, unfortunately, your typical libertarian struggles with is we're all very intellectual, we're all very, polished in the way that we think and polished in the fine details of the views that we have, but we're not particularly good at going out and talking to members of the public who often are encountering our ideas for the first time. Like we're having these really granular and deep conversations amongst ourselves, and the average person is just like, you know what, you want to lower taxes a bit? That's outrageous. That's ridiculous. We live in our own world a little bit. So I think it's fantastic that you're energized by that. I think that's something that maybe a few other libertarians in the party and abroad could benefit from.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Um,
wouldn't say that I'm your classic libertarian in any way, shape, or form. That's
what
why I kind
you're not a middle-aged man,
of
a
hate to
middle-aged
break
white
it to
man.
you. I do not identify that way, Pietro.
Um, Now you're running for Dunkley, is that correct?
That is correct. Yep. So that covers
Um,
Mount Eliza, Langwarrin, Skye, Frankston, and a little bit of Sandhurst, and Frankston South, Langy South. Yep.
Now Dunkley is having a by-election, which has occurred because is it Peter Murphy is the name of the Labor lady who passed away. So run me through a little bit of what Dunkley is like. Is it left-leaning? Is it right-leaning? Is there how are the major parties approaching Dunkley? What's the kind of lay of the land before heading into this election?
So, yes, Peter Murphy was one of the good ones, I must say. A lot of people, no one in the community has a bad word to say about her, to be honest. Um, and unfortunately, those circumstances has brought together the by-election. Uh, it's funny that Labor and Liberal are trying so hard for this seat. They've flown Dutton in, they've flown Albo in, all the Canberra people are down here taking videos and doing their walks and all that kind of stuff. but it's funny because David's been down here the whole time, and I know that David doesn't work in Canberra, but David's always pounding the pavement in Frankston, and he's always pounding the pavement down this way in the southeast. And
Sorry, David Limbrick, for anyone who doesn't understand the
sorry,
shorthand of David amongst us, David is David Limbrick, the MP for Southeast Metro for the Libertarian Party. But so you're referring to David Limbrick when you say he's the one pounding the pavement.
my apologies. Yes, David Limbrick, upper house member for Southeastern Metro. So Labor and Liberal at the moment, the lay of the land is we have Nathan. The Liberal candidate is the ex-mayor. Ex-mayor has actually set up, or the mayor, he's taken a sabbatical. He set up a day called Mayor's Day, which is meant to occur after the by-election, which I think is really funny because when I saw it the first time, we weren't in this situation. We were about to have a by-election. And I was like, who thinks about having a day about their position? It'd be like if, I had for those of you that don't know, I'm also the Victorian secretary for the Libertarian Party. It'd be like if I said to the party, all right, let's have a day called Secretary Day. I just thought it was really silly. But that's just me. Other people might enjoy Mayor's Day. I don't know what that includes. Labor is a little bit different. Not really sure on their tactics of campaigning, but they are definitely rolling Albo around. He was most recently at Frankston Bowls Club, so campaigning there, I'm assuming. One of them has also promised the Liberal Party has promised $900 million towards the Frankston Baxter rail link. So there's a V-line train down here, which doesn't run super frequently. Population has obviously increased, as time has gone on. And this is an election promise that gets rolled out every single election here, whether that's Dunkley, whether that's Flinders, whether that's, the state electorates of Hastings, whatever that may be. And so they promised $900 million. And I thought, have I heard this before? And in 2018, Labor actually promised to electrify the line, to actually upgrade the train line down here. But in 2018, Labor didn't win. Guess who won? The Liberals. But the Liberals didn't do anything when they got in. And now the Liberals, funnily enough, are promising that they're going to do it. But it's, no matter who is in, they're still not doing anything about it. So it's a funny tactic.
So is this this train line and the funding of this train line to electrify it, is this going to be a central issue for the two major parties and in general just for this Dunkley by-election? Like, is this going to be a big deal regarding who wins, do you think?
I don't know if it will make or break the election, and the support or not support is going to change the outcome of the election. But what I do know is that it ends up being something that gets thrown around every election, which is almost worse than if it was a sticking point of the election,
Okay.
because it shows that they really don't hold much value in it, the fact that they throw it around like it's nothing.
Right. So if it was a sticking point, at least maybe this time whoever would win would definitely do something. But there's the risk that it just keeps remaining this. They pay lip service to it, and then it doesn't actually get done. Okay. Well, in that case, what would be your solution to fixing this train line problem?
Great question. So, libertarian philosophy obviously kind of goes into privatization and ensuring that people are investing in the things that they want. And our society has a long way to go to getting to that point. But there's been a few cost studies, and don't quote me particularly on these numbers, but it's approximately $1.3 billion to do what needs to be done to the train line. Okay. Now, you might think $1.3 billion is a lot. I did task someone with the goal of finding $1.3 billion of waste, because we know the government is wastefully spending all the time. And sadly, it only took us finding 4 things as wasteful spending to find the $1.3 billion. Now, that includes, and I'll end up sending these through to you because I don't want to rattle them off the top of my head and misquote them to you. But pretty much there's been about $900 million that has gone to ammunitions and other items that assist in funding war pretty much overseas. There's been a foreign aid for climate emergency and climate management. And there's a couple of others, one which is including foreign aid through, and in no way do I mean anything by this community group, but it's foreign aid for the LGBTQ plus, which, as my understanding, it's not about immigration or safe haven or anything like that. It's actually about funding it overseas. So those kind of things add up to $1.3 billion. And that's our taxpayer dollars going overseas for things that we don't have any control over. But for at least, the better part of a decade, the Flinders and Dunkley communities have been yelling out for this train line. So why can't we spend our taxpayer dollars on Australia and in where we need it, where we need something?
I love that you got you tasked someone with finding $1.4 billion of waste, and you probably assumed that you'd given them a task that would take them a week or two, and in about 5 minutes they just looked at some stupid foreign aid that we're funding and found $1.4 billion immediately. I mean, if you want to, I know we gave like $1 billion plus to Ukraine alone, which is, I think, a war we definitely shouldn't be helping to fund. So there's $1 billion right there, that just off the top of my head, on one thing, on one
That's
war.
exactly.
And I mean, there's plenty of other wars and warmongering that we support. So I mean, that's great. We've jumped straight into Dunkley and into the intricacies of Dunkley, but the point of this interview was actually also to get to know you a little bit, because I mean, a lot of the people who watch this show are either libertarian adjacent and consider voting libertarian, or members of the Libertarian Party who might want to get to know their candidate a little bit better. So let's backtrack a little bit. We've dived straight into Dunkley. We'll get back to some policy stuff later. But well, tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, how you came to libertarianism, because I mean, the status quo, the default for most people, is growing up in a world that is very hostile to libertarians. So usually there is a journey that we had to make to get to the views that we hold today. So how did you become a libertarian? What was that like?
So there's a few parts to that question. So please jump in if I kind of go off the track, pun intended. So so how did I come to libertarianism? I think I've always been a libertarian and I didn't know it. So when I was in about year 6, I actually did child acting and child modeling. And when I got my first paycheck, which was about $800, I had tax taken out of it. And I could not understand, like, when I was in year 6, I didn't really understand what tax was, obviously. And my mum had to explain it to me, and she's like, oh, well, technically, you'll get it back eventually. And I'm like, but why did they take it in the first place if I'm just going to get it back eventually? We had to do a public speaking task in school, and I actually spoke about why underage people should not get taxed. And I didn't win the competition, and I wish my mum recorded it so I could show it now. But so that's kind of how I felt about tax when I was in year 6. And then obviously the pandemic has impacted all of us in different ways. And I felt like I was crazy for feeling the way I did. And, everyone was kind of almost like a hive mind around me. And, I thought I was kind of broken. And so then I started watching Parliament, and I found David and Tim and
David
Catherine
Limbrick
Cummings.
and Tim Quilty, for those who aren't used to the Libertarian Party's shorthand. But yes, our two heroes during the pandemic.
David has told me so many times not to call him just David, and I should say David Limbrick, so I apologize.
So, sorry, you saw them in Parliament?
Yes. And finally, someone was speaking, my mind. Someone was actually representing how I thought about the situation. And then eventually the Freedom Manifesto came out, and I read the policies. And, I think if you agree with 95% of policies within a political party, then that's pretty much as good as it gets. And I can tell you, based on the Freedom Manifesto, that I agreed with 95% of it, and I was hooked. I was a libertarian, and I realized everything in my life leading up to this really made sense in terms of libertarianism. And yeah, I didn't even know people became political members. They would pay for membership. So put my hat straight in the ring to become a candidate, and here I am. And yeah.
I mean, I think that says a lot about your kind of character, your personality, to become interested in politics, interested in a political party, and immediately candidate within the space of a few months. You don't do things by half measures. That's for sure.
Uh, my partner likes to say the expression balls to the wall. And that is what I live and breathe. But I've always been interested in politics. I did legal studies in school. I always knew I wanted to get into politics, but I was planning on doing it when I was, 40, like everyone else does when they're 40. And then when the pandemic kind of happened, I was like, actually, there needs to be young representation in Parliament as well. If everyone waited until they're 40, young people would never really be represented. So put my hat in the ring for a party that I felt strongly about getting behind.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you're obviously a very young candidate, but you'd be amongst the most senior members of the Greens candidates if you went and worked for one of those parties, because they have kids running in their elections all the time, straight out of high school, straight onto the ballot.
I'm not sure if you know this, Pietro, but you're not meant to call women old. So thanks.
I said you were young. Oh no,
Oh,
old
sorry.
compared to the Greens. Sorry. Yeah, no, you're
Compared to the
right.
Greens, I'm old.
My mistake. I guess I'll get cancelled for that one. Um, I also, just to harken back to your point before, I love the imagery of a 12-year-old getting their first paycheck and their mum explaining to them that, oh no, you don't understand. Like, you this isn't stealing your money because it goes towards building roads. And how much a 12-year-old could possibly care about roads. I don't give a fuck about your roads, mom. Give me my money. What the hell is this?
Yeah,
I don't know. That image was really funny in my head.
I'm not even sure if we lodged the tax return or if mum just didn't tell me about it because I never saw the rest of the money.
Um, so there's one thing that is very different about you running as a libertarian compared to the last time I interviewed a libertarian candidate. I've interviewed a fair few over the course of this show, but the big difference is that since the last libertarian I interviewed, it's not necessarily a given that libertarians have to lose elections. We had the enormous world-changing, groundbreaking event, which viewers of the show will be well familiar with, but of Javier Milei winning in Argentina and becoming the president there. So, it's kind of like this glass ceiling shattering where we thought that libertarianism is a great idea, but we have to build up this process and we have to work our way up to being actually able to take power. And he's just done it. He just did it. He's taken power and he's doing fantastic things in Argentina. Granted, the situation there is very different, but it's kind of shown us as libertarians, hold on, maybe we can win this thing. Maybe we don't have to wait 10, 20, 30 years to change things. Now, I'm not saying obviously it's very difficult, especially a lower house seat, but how has the Javier Milei situation, what are your thoughts on it, first of all? And has that changed the way that you look at campaigning or the way that we should be looking at elections?
It's a great question. Really great question. Javier Milei gives hope to libertarians everywhere, and that's really important, especially when nothing worth having in life comes easy, and having libertarians in Parliament, especially in Australia, will not come easy to the ones that are working for it. So he gives us hope, and that we can make a change, that we can, eventually get to a majority government and hopefully have a libertarian prime minister one day. So, yeah, I think Javier Milei is really great for the libertarian movement. In terms of the word libertarian getting out there into, everyday people's vocabulary, that's also really important because not only do we have to convince people of our policies, and I'm sure you're aware, Pietro, and explain it to them, but we actually also have to explain the word libertarian to begin with, and then go through our policies. So that road to bring people along on the journey with us is a lot longer, and Javier Milei has, etched into that and taken a little bit of the work out of that for us.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, obviously, both of us have been involved in the broader campaigns, especially in 2022. And something like the most basic brick wall that all of us came and came face to face with was this idea that people did not know what a libertarian was. I mean, you can't even suggest, hey, you should be voting for me if they don't know what and who you are. Like entering the vernacular of the average person is so invaluable. I'm with you there, for sure, with Javier Milei. Obviously, as you alluded to, we can't just win one big election and we're in, the way that has happened in Argentina. I mean, here we would have to win a majority of lower house seats, and the path is certainly a lot longer to that. But hey, one lower house seat at a time. Let's start with Dunkley. What do you think?
Oh, I would love that. I would like to see the tide turn. And I believe the Dunkley Frankston area will be the first lower house seat that we get. David Limbrick has quite a good profile down here. And I've been continuing to pound the pavement for the last 2 years also. And I will continue to do that, because in my lifetime, I would like to see us hold a government with libertarianism.
On that, I'm well aware, as are many people within the party, but maybe some of our viewers aren't aware. You are renowned for being a very hardworking campaigner. You are renowned for being someone who, as you said, pounds the pavement intensely when you're running for one of your seats, which is obviously fantastic. It's exactly what we need. We need a candidate who's proud of the views that we hold, and where some of us might not be spectacular at approaching members of the public, you have that ability. So. But for people who aren't really involved in campaigning, or who haven't been involved in campaigning, it's kind of this it's a really interesting little corner of life, because say you're standing at a how to vote, you're handing out how to vote cards at a polling booth, or say you're at a candidate forum. You're surrounded by people who have completely different views of the world, and you'll have 5 or 6 of complete opposite views of the world standing in close proximity to each other for hours on end. And you're all obviously passionate about politics, because you're all there handing out how to vote cards. And so you're all really willing to talk about it. And so it's kind of this microcosm that never exists in the regular world, where you get to talk to people from completely different walks of life, completely different philosophies that often we think are stupid and absurd, but they are just as certain that their philosophy is correct, and that ours is stupid and absurd as we are of our views. And it's something kind of really, it's really fun, to be honest. And it's kind of indescribable to someone who hasn't tried their hand at that before. And given that you're someone who is so involved in doing this, pounding the pavement, doing all this sort of campaigning stuff, I was wondering if there was a story or two that stood out in your mind as funny or interesting or typical of campaigning, that might enlighten some of our viewers as to what campaigning hard is actually like.
Oh, wow. Asking for a story, I wouldn't even know where to begin. So in my day-to-day job, I do work in HR, so I am used to ensuring that conversations can be navigated in a civil manner without anyone turning around and being like, your view is stupid, and all those kind of things. In terms of stories, what kind of story do you want, Pietro? Do you want something that's, disgusting? Do you want something that's funny? Where do you want to begin?
What something that stood out in your mind as notable? It doesn't have to be disgusting. It doesn't have to be a horror story of some socialist coming and punching you in the back of the head or something. I don't know, whatever they do.
So yesterday was a good one. We were campaigning at Carrum Downs Shops, David Limbrick and myself, and this sometimes. People, depending on what's going on in their personal lives, and I'll just caveat those, sometimes people just want to yell at someone at a shopping center. They don't necessarily know or care, or actually care that you're a human being. But yesterday at Carrum Downs Shopping Centre, I said to someone trying to hand out my flyer, if you're mad at both Labor and Liberal, I'm the person that you vote for. And he turned back around, because he kind of walked past me, he turned back around and he faced me and he's like, you know what? How about you reduce our energy prices? How about you reduce the electricity that we pay by bringing in nuclear energy? And I opened up my flyer and I was like, I have that policy right here. That's one of our policies. And he was like, oh, and he just started walking off. And I was like, do you want one of these flyers? He's like, no. And I was like, but I agree with you. And he's walking off. So I'm yelling at him, but I agree with you. And he's thrown his hands up and he's just walked off. And then I was so shocked by the experience, because I've never been yelled at for agreeing with someone. But But anyway, he came back out. He must have had to think about it when he was doing his grocery shopping. And he wished me luck. And I said, okay, thank you so much. Would you like a flyer? And he said no. Continued to
It's kind of like like anyone who's worked in customer service, they're a different breed of people. If you've worked in customer service, you've gone through kind of the ringer at some point in your life, because it's its own world, customer service. And this is almost like customer service on steroids. It's almost like, because the stakes feel higher, because it's whoever we elect into government, it's like everyone is so heightened and feels the right to go and to speak with a candidate and to abuse them, even for agreeing with them.
It feels sometimes that people are more loyal to political parties than they are to footy teams, to be honest. They've grown up in a way where their mum or dad voted Labor, voted Liberal, and so that's been institutionalized into them, and they've never stopped to change their mind because they've kind of grown up with that view their whole lives. And those are some of the people that we may be unable to change. They're generational voters, but if anything, be loyal to your footy club, whether that's Essendon or Carlton or whoever it may be. But you absolutely should not be loyal to a political party, because we should be looking at a political party for what they do for our policies and our communities and all of those kind of things. It actually has nothing to do with loyalty. You and I are in the Libertarian Party because we believe the Libertarian Party has the best policies and principles and values for us to have in government. And that is what makes us loyal to the party. If we changed and we lost those values and views as a party, I'm sure that you and I wouldn't be around any longer. And party loyalty is actually one of the worst things for politics, in my opinion.
That's a fantastic point. I'm so glad you brought that up. I wasn't even thinking in that direction, but there's something to be said for, like, in human nature. There is this I don't know where it comes from probably some prehistoric or historic trait that we had to develop and evolve. But this idea of, like, we've got like tribalism hardwired into our brains. And I mean, even if you think of like a footy team, what is it really that you're tribally attached to when it comes to a footy team or any sports team? And I follow sports teams. Like, I understand that tribal need, but it's usually just like the colors on the shirt, maybe the home ground, maybe some people that you follow the team with. Maybe it's some memories of following them as a kid. Quite often, like even with sports team, there'll be a player that you hate because he's from your rival team. And then the second that he joins your team, he's your favorite player in the world. And, this, because of that tribal attachment. And you're right. There is this tendency to conflate the two, kind of conflate sporting with politics, probably also because there's the whole spectacle of winning and losing. Like, election night is exciting. It's like grand final for nerds. It's like a grand final for nerds, and red team wins or blue team wins, and it feels good to be on the winning team. So there's that tribal thing is something that seems to be just hardwired into people, and it's toxic when it comes to politics, because it shouldn't be tribal. It should be ideas that we're focusing on.
Absolutely. I think with a footy team or a soccer team or whatever sport you play, it's about sticking around the good and the bad. And that's where that loyalty comes in. It's like, when your partner annoys you or upsets you, you're not just going to walk away. You go through the good and the bad together. But actually with politics, you shouldn't stick around for the bad, and we should be changing our vote during the bad, because or else it'll just continue to be bad if we don't make changes.
There's also something else that's really absurd when you think about it, when it comes to like this, tribalism and winning and losing. In footy or soccer or whatever the sport may be that you're following, part of the satisfaction of your team winning is that you get to hang shit on your friends whose team didn't win. Right. That's part of the satisfaction. It's like, I won, you didn't, even though I didn't do anything. I wasn't playing the game. I didn't do anything, but my colors, my team won and your team lost. And therefore I'm going to derive some satisfaction from this. And if you apply that same principle to politics, like, haha, my colors won, my team won, even though, again, I didn't do anything. Maybe I cast one vote in a trillion that didn't have any impact. But the very real implication is that now the things that I want to happen are forcibly imposed on you because I won. There's this extra layer of toxicity, especially when it comes to the two majors who, as we know, are just different variations on authoritarianism. They just want to use the state to tell the other side what they have to do. And it's, again, the stakes are so much higher, but there's something so much more poisonous and toxic about, haha, I won, now you have to do what I tell you to do.
And I think great politicians, across history has always said, I will represent the people that voted for me and the people that didn't. And, that you can't really say that when Essendon's in the grand final and, they won and no one else did. But with parliamentarians, with politicians, absolutely, you should be representing all people because, yes, majority of people elected you, but everyone is still your constituent. So I really struggle with that. And I really struggle with, the major parties just going, okay, well, I'm just going to take care of this cohort of people. We are all society. And I think that's why libertarian philosophy is actually the superior philosophy and the superior principles, because it's not about, okay, well, we're choosing this cohort of people to represent. We're using principled ethics to make decisions to ensure that everyone is almost receiving the same kind of benefits.
It's incredible, of all the libertarian stuff that we've talked about today, which most people find completely unrealistic and unbelievable. The most unrealistic thing you've spoken about so far is Essendon winning a grand final. So
My heart.
I know nothing about footy, and I know that thing doesn't happen. So
I am an Essendon supporter, for those of you that's wondering. That's why I brought them up twice. And I stick around through the good and the bad. I am loyal to Essendon. Yes.
Well, I figured as much, because otherwise, why would you use that team as an example? Anyway, no, libertarians.
So it's not Collingwood.
And I mean, libertarians are pro, legalizing drug use. So your performance enhancing drugs from a few years ago, we'd be all about that.
The worst part is we didn't even get better.
Yeah, we used performance enhancing drugs and still sucked.
You said that, not me, and I will not publicly diss Essendon. If Essendon is watching, please send me some free stuff.
Yeah, I soccer's way better anyway. Anyway, that's not what we're here to discuss. Let's get back onto your campaign for Dunkley. So, there are lots of things that libertarian philosophy kind of touches on. Libertarian philosophy can be applied to many areas, from foreign intervention, local economics, the economy, individual social rights, all sorts of things. So it's kind of important to pick and choose when you're campaigning which specific ideas will grab people at this specific time, and which specific ideas are the most important that people need to be hearing at any specific time. So I'm curious, for the Dunkley by-election, what are the areas that you guys are focusing on? And why do you think these are the important ones that people will care about to actually, open their minds to trying something new like libertarianism?
So everyone's talking about cost of living. Would be we wouldn't be part of the general discourse if we weren't talking about cost of living. Our cost of living solutions are actually quite simple, and they would be quite effective almost straight away. So there is fuel excise. So for those of you that don't know fuel excise, 48 cents of every litre of fuel that we purchase goes to the government. Now, people go, well, you can't remove fuel excise because what about our roads? Have you seen our roads recently? Not a lot of that money is getting to our roads. And it's spent on other stuff. It's spent on, wasteful spending as well. So we cut 48 cents off every litre. We would end up reducing the cost of goods, groceries, because you think about the freight costs. And you see those little signs on the back of semi-trailers and trucks to say, without trucks, Australia stops, kind of thing. And it is true, but all of those run on, diesel. And that's 48 cents of every litre going towards that. So by removing fuel excise or lowering fuel excise, we will ensure that groceries are cheaper. We will ensure that getting to work is cheaper. We would have more money in our pocket as well. We also have a policy on income tax. Now, a lot of people think it's really boring, income tax and talking about tax, but it's actually not, because we all pay tax. Even, a 12-year-old pays tax if they work. We want to raise the tax-free threshold to $45,000 and then have a flat 20% tax. So when they were talking about the stage 3 tax cuts, and they've backflipped and they've taken more from the $200,000 people, and they've, given more income back to, the lower paid $40,000 people. But our policy doesn't identify, it doesn't even cause a social war, it doesn't cause an economic war in terms of you're rich, you're poor. No, everyone's treated exactly equally. Obviously, the people that are, on $200,000, they are paying more tax, whether that's a flat 20% tax or not, they're still paying more tax. And, the $40,000 people would actually not be paying tax at all because they're not earning enough to go past that tax-free threshold. So, yeah. And also alcohol excise. We do love a drink down here on the peninsula, having a couple of cheeky bevies on the beach. And it's ridiculous in terms of how much excise we pay on alcohol as well. I think a bottle, don't quote me on these numbers, but I think a bottle of Jack Daniels is like $58, when in actual fact you can get it overseas for like $28. So absolutely ridiculous, and we want to remove that also.
Yeah, there's a few things that are really interesting there, because as you said correctly, the fuel excise, unless you sort of think about it and break it down, the cost of cargoing goods and services and whatnot, the companies and the people who are in charge of doing these things, they have to earn a profit. So the extra cost on them is going to be passed on to the consumer. So it's this additional cost that it's almost hidden, a lot of the ways that tax ends up affecting us. But when you think about fuel excise, okay, it's a random number that maybe not random, but it's very arbitrary number that the government has chosen as what they need you to pay per liter of fuel, whatever. Okay, you can somewhat justify in your head, well, maybe that number is accurate and they actually need that to look after the roads. Sure, we don't agree, we don't believe them, but maybe there's an argument there. Income tax, okay, sure, they need to tax this amount of our income for the government to survive. And if you look at it from the statist point of view, people who believe with this, that the state and agree with everything that the government does and says, you can say, okay, maybe we do need a certain amount of our income to be taxed for the government to be able to function the way that it does. But alcohol tax is a sin tax. So they're taxing you for doing something that is deemed to be a sin, something that's not nice, something that's naughty. And this is so absurd, not only on its face, but when you compare it to the rest of the world who doesn't have it. We are the outlier. Australia is the outlier that has decided that our civilians are not responsible enough to be able to curtail their own drinking of alcohol, and therefore they need to be minded to make sure that they don't turn into raging alcoholics and, all the rest of the connotations that come with alcoholism. Like, that is the most absurd one on its head, because not even the statist can explain it away.
Yep. And there's this whole where people think that the government should act like our mum and dad. So, your mum saying, oh, make sure you only have 4 drinks tonight, don't get too wasted. The government is not our mum and dad. If you want to stop drinking, you should stop drinking. That's your choice. And if you do, want to have a drink every 3 months, you shouldn't be, sinned for that. Almost. It's where does it end when we say, okay, government, please intervene when things are bad. Please intervene so you can tell me how I should live my life. When, is there going to be a sugar tax? Is there going to be a junk food tax? Is there going to be, and I hope Labor and Liberal aren't watching this, because I'm going to give them some ideas and I don't want them to, do that. But where does it end? And that's kind of the snowball effect of living in this kind of society. Yeah, maybe once upon a time we brought in an alcohol excise tax, so young kids would stop buying it. Well, there's laws around young kids stop buying it. There's laws around those kind of things. And also we do have I was going to say, there's health services there to help people if they want the help to stop drinking. A tax isn't going to stop that if they don't want to help themselves anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, because I think if anything, what I feel like the way that Australians look at themselves, like our sort of national identity, is that we are kind of these rugged, individualist, almost anti-authoritarian. You know, the whole Ned Kelly view of the world. And in reality, what I think what COVID showed is that at least at that period in time, we weren't. We were these very submissive, and we wanted the government to literally be, you know, take the in loco parentis role of our mother and father to tell us what to do and to keep us safe and whatnot. And I'm curious because so COVID was absolutely the worst we saw of that. And then there was kind of a backlash of a few, you know, the protest movement and all of that. And then I would say that the voice referendum was almost like a continuation of that kind of, hey, we're not going to vote the way that you tell us to vote. So I'm curious, what's you maybe you have your finger on the pulse, or maybe you're just speculating. How do you see, compared to what it's been in recent times, the Australian mentality, the Australian openness for this kind of rugged individualism that we see ourselves to have?
It's a good question. I think the Australian submissiveness, as you so put it, is actually because we haven't faced a lot of adversity as a country,
Okay.
and so we have not needed to pay too much attention to politics because everything has kind of been all right, and no one's been impacted necessarily too badly to the extent that they're looking at the government going, what the hell are you doing, kind of thing. And that's why we are here. In terms of the Australian people and the people in the community of Dunkley, there are a lot of people that are now paying attention, and COVID made us go, wait a minute, what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do need to pay attention. And I think the libertarian way is actually we just want to be able to live our lives, and we just want to be able to chill and not have to worry about any of these things. We are naturally laid back people as libertarians, right? But it's gotten to a point, and I would say, at least for myself, it's gotten to a point where I go, well, I can't sit by and do nothing, because that is being threatened. Me being able to live that relatively chill life, where easygoing, Australian way is almost being stolen from me.
Yeah, I mean, there's the the president of the Libertarian Party, who's a councillor in the Surf Coast area, he himself, he says, I only ever got into this because I want the government to leave me alone. There's kind of like this, for every active and outspoken and candid and involved in politics libertarian, you've got to imagine there's this slice of society that is maybe currently apathetic to politics, that would be libertarian, but because the natural tendency is to think, hey, I just want to be left alone, and maybe because they haven't encountered the term libertarianism, or maybe because they haven't encountered enough authoritarianism, enough adversity, as you said, yet they haven't been forced into becoming engaged. I'm not sure what the solution to that is, though, to reach that apathetic slice. Maybe because the solution, it would seem, is that there needs to be more authoritarianism before we can awaken those people. So is there another path, do you think?
I think there's pounding the pavement. I think there's having conversations with your politically apathetic, friends and family. And, there's different ways to approach those conversations. There's different ways to, ensure that they are almost, even slightly paying attention more than what they are now. And that will bring about change. But change doesn't happen overnight. Nothing, as I said earlier, nothing worth having in life comes easy. And fighting for a chill and laid back Australia because the government's not intervening too much, that's absolutely worth fighting for.
So now let's take kind of a step back and look a little bit more broadly at what's happening in the world. Now, obviously, it would be fantastic to get elected in Dunkley, and there's I understand the policies that you're running with for Dunkley are not only appealing to people, but also address a lot of the questions around cost of living and generally the economics of libertarianism as well. But if we look at the world and what's happening more broadly, I mean, there is so much to be despairing about the direction the world is going in. If we talk about things like globalization, if we're talking things like the devaluing of currency, if we're talking about things like foreign wars overseas, if we're talking about things like mass incarcerations for drug use, there's so many things that are heading in the wrong direction, even if we have these small wins such as Javier Milei and the ideas of libertarianism becoming more widespread. So given that libertarians have ostensibly been right about every crisis, and then the crisis happens anyway, despite what we say, and then we just tell people, I told you so afterwards. What do you think is the most important thing that libertarianism has the answer to today that will come to a head within the near future?
That is a great question. What is the most important thing today? Look, I think a lot of what we say from the Libertarian Party here in Victoria, at least, is it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Unfortunately, it does take adversity sometimes to get us to, wake up or change or look into things, pay more attention, make a difference. Unfortunately, that is just the nature of life. Being an adult, being a teenager, you have to make mistakes and learn from them. So unfortunately, I do think the situation that we are in right now, in Victoria specifically, and in Australia specifically, is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. But I do believe we will get there. And I think in my lifetime and my children's lifetime, we will be able to make the difference that we need to make to ensure that we go back to being prosperous and laid back and chill, and having fun, most importantly, rather than worrying about all this doom and gloom. Because right now it feels like all around us is just doom and gloom. Our future, the world, the economy, raising a kid, whether that's, buying more dogs, buying more animals, everything is just doom and gloom.
Yeah, and I mean the doom and gloom I think often is very much concentrated among libertarian communities. I mean, prior to the real surge in inflation that's hurting people in a very impossible to ignore manner over the last couple of years, especially, the average person wasn't seeing the doom and gloom that we were seeing. The average person, I think, is that kind of laid back. It's they're being sparked out of that complacency a little bit. I'll give you a lighter topic. I'll rather than what's the worst thing happening in the world right now.
Tell me what makes you depressed.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So, do you have who are your libertarian inspirations? Who do you now? Are they I mean, politicians or people that you've read, or what guides your libertarianism? I think that'll give us a little bit of an insight into who you are and how you got here.
Good question. David is probably my biggest inspiration. He's very principled. He's very David Limbrick, by the way. Sorry for everyone.
By this point, I think people have understood. Everyone's been brought into our shorthand now. David is David.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad that everyone's figured that out. He's very calm and collected in the way he approaches things. He doesn't let party lines or, red or blue get in the way of him achieving his goal, which is to ensure that, Victoria is more prosperous, or ensure that the government aren't, overreaching into our lives. He never loses sight of the objective. And it's not to slam other politicians. It's not to, say that we're the best, chuck out the rest kind of thing. It's to ensure that we are making better decisions in Parliament. And I think David's really, really good at that. And I do enjoy the way he explains certain topics to everybody. And I think that's why he's brought so many people along on the journey. So I'm very grateful and lucky enough to call him my mentor. And he was the kind of the beacon that brought me and so many others to the Libertarian Party, or formerly Liberal Democrats.
Yeah, there's something to be said for and I mention this quite often, but there was an extreme value in that period when we felt insane because we felt ostracized by everyone, and the 24/7 news media cycle was telling us that we were insane outsiders and that we were wrong and that we were our views were illegitimate, and there was extreme power in having two members of parliament who were saying the things that we believed, because I mean, it was like the state, the government, they put so much value and prestige, esteem on these institutions of theirs. So it's very hard to delegitimize an opinion when we have someone in there who is a part of that system who's sharing those same opinions. I remember that was even more, because I mean, for what all the good that David and Tim did, they didn't stop mandates, they didn't stop lockdowns, but there was an extreme value in what they did by just legitimizing the opinion of people who were outsiders. So I think for that reason alone, I think I'm with you, David. Was absolutely a hero. Was absolutely a hero, and was a big factor towards so many people joining the Libertarian Party during the COVID movement.
And definitely can't take that away from Tim either, or Catherine Cummings as well. She was there. They were all crying when the pandemic management bill got passed, and sadly, I know that me and a few others shed a tear as well. But yeah, I'm glad that we had them, because who knows what would have happened to so many people if they didn't have that beacon of hope.
Well, I mean, imagine that there are three MPs who got elected thanks to preferences, because through the upper house it was very possible that we wouldn't have had any of those three. So I mean, imagine the same situation without someone in there to legitimize this opinion of all these people who are considered outsiders. We would have been even more voiceless than the voiceless that we were. So yeah, no, we were truly lucky to have those people there during that time. I have maybe come to appreciate that even more over time than I was at the time. At the time, I was just, angry.
Yeah.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about what's happening with your Dunkley campaign. What's coming up? Is there anywhere that people can support you? Is there any way people can support you? How can people get behind you to help you do something for Dunkley?
Okay, well, there's a lot of ways to show your support in Dunkley. So next weekend we're doing a massive letterbox blitz. So that's the 10th of Feb. Our goal is to letterbox 35,000 flyers. So you can imagine that that's quite a lot, and we need a lot of boots on the ground to be able to do that. It costs a lot of money for us to actually pay Australia Post to do that. So we rely on our volunteers giving up their Saturdays to make this difference. After that, you can buy a ticket to our campaign launch, which will be at Beersall Brewery in Seaford. So there's a few ticket options available. It's unlimited pizza, and then depending on what package you buy, depends on how many free drinks or purchase drinks you acquire. And the other ways, we also have a virtual campaign launch. So that's an in-person campaign launch. We also have a virtual campaign launch this Tuesday, where we have some guest speakers. And I actually must, while I'm on here, say how much I appreciate some of the leadership in the party and the support that they have given me. So there's a guest speaker. I'm not sure if they're confirmed, so I won't say who it is. But John Ruddick will be there, so our New South Wales Member of Parliament. Campbell Newman has also agreed to come. And, I've called those guys a couple of times through this campaign, and I am very appreciative of the support that I do get from those people. So virtual campaign, you can attend from anywhere in Australia. There will hopefully be some different ways for you to kind of donate money through that, whether that's a raffle or other. You can always go on the donation page as well and donate to the campaign. Every single cent that is donated makes an absolute difference in what we can do. We don't have the money that the major parties do. And I know it sounds a little, please, sir, give me more. But just imagine what we could do if we were playing on the same field with the same money as the major parties. It would be a massive upset for them. So I would like to cause that massive upset. And I hope you help And that's really it. Other than that, I'm at the shopping center, day in, day out, or supermarkets, or I'll be hitting up the train stations, not on the platform, if anyone from Labor's listening, and handing out my flyers and talking to locals.
Fantastic. And I believe all of that stuff to donate, to join the campaign launch, to join the virtual campaign launch, all of that can be found on the Libertarian Party of Victoria's website, correct?
Yes, I believe there's a drop-down box that says Dunkley, and then everything should be there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Chrysten. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you nothing but the best. And if I lived in Dunkley, I dare say I'd be voting for you. But I do
Thanks,
not,
Pietro.
so I won't be voting for you. Sorry, but we give you our support from a distance anyway. Any last messages you want to leave our viewers with?
I'd like to thank everyone, whether you just watch from the sidelines, potentially like a post here and there, by you listening to these kind of videos that Pietro does, makes a massive difference, actually, because then you can talk to your family and your friends. And then when the election does come around, you are making a difference. So please don't think just because you're not getting your face out there or donating money that you can't make a difference. You absolutely can, and you're part of the change. So I'd just like to thank everyone for all that they do for the libertarian movement.
Fantastic. If you don't already, you can follow us on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and Twitter. Other than that, we will catch you next time. Thank you very much for watching.